I'm Merritt Ansa, and you're listening to the Devoted Dreamers podcast, the podcast for dreamers, creators, and makers who are eager to wake up in the morning with the confidence to say, this is who God made me, and this is the dream He's given me. If you have a dream on your heart, but you're confused about how to move forward, or you have fear, anxiety, and you worry that you're not enough, you're halted by comparison because somebody else is already doing your dream, or you're struggling to believe there is anything God could ever use you for. Welcome to Season 7. You're about to receive the encouragement you need to pursue that dream. Through the stories of women just like you who have faced their fears, fought back lies, taken bold steps, and are still in the middle of it. Stick around and you will be emboldened to take the next step. Grow in confidence in your identity in Christ. Become sure of His faithfulness in your life and be inspired by the good He will fuel through you in the world. Because, sister, the victory is already yours. Hey dreamers, today's interview with author, podcaster, and founder of Thrive Moms is sponsored by Faithful Counseling. Stay tuned later in the show for more information on how you can get 10% off your first month of counseling just for being a listener of the Devoted Dreamers podcast. And although Kara-Kae James and I recorded this interview a few months back, I feel like the range of topics we cover is incredibly well timed for where we all are right now, here in mid-April 2020, with the coronavirus pandemic still ravaging our world. So while you're listening, I want you to pay attention to the following. Number one, so many great reminders in here that as followers of Jesus, we are eligible for the abundant life right now. Whatever challenge life or the coronavirus has thrown your way, look for the abundance that comes from Him. You can find it right where you are. Number two, that one way out of the fear of failure is to be authentic and to show your true self. And number three, take time to rest. Sabbath is so important for you and your dream. And it doesn't have to be on a Sunday, but it does have to be. So don't miss out on that. Don't say, I'll Sabbath later, because later might never come. Establish that habit now. Kara-Kae is giving away a copy of her book, so be sure to go find that over on my Instagram after you listen to this episode. There's a ton more where all that came from, so let's get to it. Hey, Devoted Dreamers, welcome to our next episode and an interview today with Kara-Kae James, who I'm really interested to chat with and excited to introduce you to. Kara is a writer and a speaker, also a podcaster, and she's passionate about seeing women's lives changed and impacted through the gospel. And she helps women find their place in big conversations and develop a true and honest faith. She's the founder of Thrive Moms, which is an online ministry, and I'll give her a chance to share more about that. But she also co-hosts the podcast Asking for a Friend. So Kara-Kae, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's really fun. And I want you to share about Thrive Moms. I want you to share about Asking for a Friend and your new book. And so maybe we'll just kick that off by having you talk about how you would describe your God-shaped dream.
Sounds good. Okay, so my story kind of goes back to when I first started having kids. I had 3 kids in less than 3 years, which was crazy. It's as crazy as it sounds.
Yeah.
It was a lot. And so in that season, I really found myself sinking into survival mode as a mom, as a wife, as a follower of Christ. You know, I was just scraping by to get through each and every day. And it was in that season that God really opened my eyes to the fact that abundant life is for all of us, no matter what season of life we find ourselves in. And that was transformative for me, to be able to recognize that I can thrive, that I can really walk with Him in hard seasons, no matter what our season of life looks like, really changed and affected me. And it was in that season that I started a ministry called Thrive Moms. I started it with another friend of mine, and we were both in that season of life that we're like, okay, being a mom is just too hard, but there's got to be more. There's got to be hope in this, because, you know, I would pick up my Bible and I would read all these stories, and Jesus would say things like, I came to give you life and give it to you in the full. And we're like, all right, this has to be for us too, right? This
Mm.
isn't just for my husband or people that have older kids or, pastors or teachers. It has to be for us, the moms that feel like they're drowning. Um, and that was true. And so we started that ministry just to encourage moms that you're not alone, for one, in that feeling like you're drowning every day. And there is an answer, that Jesus has something more for us. And so that was kind of my journey. And through that, even starting to encourage women in a place of just hurt and hardship for myself, I began to really watch my life and my heart transform.
So that was kind of the first piece of just your ministry of
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah, really.
And so what did the book come next?
Yeah, so the book came out, it just came out last year. So it was about 6 years later that the book actually released. I wrote a book called Mom Up that is all about encouraging women to thrive in motherhood. And the title kind of came from, poking fun at man up. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought, moms, we always have people like kind of babying us and telling us, well, just get through this season of life, and then eventually you can get back to your life. And I thought, man, moms really need somebody to come alongside them and say, come on, like, get up, you can do this. And here's why. Not because we're doing it on our own strength or anything like that, but because God walks with us through those hard seasons and says, you're not alone. I am here and I've come to give you abundant life in this season.
So what did that look like for you? I mean, how did you begin to see the challenges and the chaos of motherhood transform into that abundant life?
It wasn't easy, for sure. I had plenty of days that were complete lows, and I've had seasons since then that were. When I was in that season where I had 3 kids under 3, I was facing intense postpartum anxiety, depression. I mean, I was just not in my right mind, and it was very challenging. And I always joke that I don't remember the first year of my 3rd child's life, because I was so just completely out of it, so tired, so exhausted. Mentally, I was just gone. And so, I joke that I don't even remember what it was like when she was a baby, but there's so much of that that's true, because I was just so checked out. I was just trying to get by instead of really enjoying each and every moment. And we hear those things like, oh, just you're going to miss it when you get out. And I was like, no way, no way. Like, I'm not going to miss any of this hard stuff. And so it was a huge struggle of just every day feeling like I was drowning and knowing there had to be hope, but not really sure what that looked like when I was lost in it.
So what does it look like?
That's a great question. For me, a lot of it was just a mindset, just changing my mindset of getting up every morning and saying, for one, I get to do this. Like, what a gift this is that I get to get up and do this. And it's hard when those kids are small and you can barely have a normal conversation with them and you're just dying to talk to an adult. But just really focusing my mind on, this is for a season, and I have this privilege of doing this, and God has something really great for me in this. And just knowing that every day I get to get up, I get to be a part of this story and pouring into this tiny person's life, and how life-changing that is, even when it feels too hard to even get yourself out of bed and manage any of it.
Yeah. And so now that your kids are, oldest
They're
is
older
10,
now.
yeah, and your youngest is 4. So can you look back on that and see like, oh, this is what God did in that time?
Oh, for sure, for sure. And it's funny. When my book came out, it was the day my book came out. A good friend of mine texted me, and she said, "Isn't it amazing what God does through our valleys and through our hardships?" And I was like, "Wow, yes!" Like, such a reminder that He took that season where I just was completely weary and worn out and just wrung out in so many ways. And He took that and used it to encourage someone else, because that was what I needed in that season, was someone to come alongside me and say, you can do this. You can find abundant life right where you are. And that was exactly what changed it for me. Was a woman came to me and said that. She said that exact same thing, that you can thrive in this and you can do it right where you are. And that changed my life. And so that is my hope, that women could see that and know that no matter, what your days look like, your bad days do not define you. We're all going to have hard days and hard seasons of life, but the goal is abundant life. The goal is to walk with him and let him take the hard load to carry, let him carry us through.
So for the mom who's out there listening and like thinking, I don't know how this could even be possible for me. Like, I'd love to hear what Thrive Moms offers, and like what would be the first step and the second step? Like, how can they start to seek that out?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things for me was finding community. And that was just something that we wanted to encourage women in. Was community is so important, because when you're trying to do it on your own, even if you are turning to God and, really pouring into him and asking for that abundance, it's still not something you can do on your own. You need a community of people to come around you and be there for you. No matter what that looks like. And there's a lot of, I talk to a lot of women that are like, okay, great, but I don't have that where I am. I don't have that in my church. I don't have that, in my neighborhood. And that is hard. Adult friendships are challenging. But that's the great thing about the internet now. Like, I've met some of my best friends on the internet, and, God will put these people in our lives if we ask him, this is what I need. I need these people to walk with me in this tough journey. And I think a lot of times it's those people and that community that comes around us that will help us get through and help us really discover what it looks like to thrive in motherhood versus just surviving, just getting by.
I agree. So important. And yeah, there has to be hope.
Yes, there has to be.
We just wouldn't survive.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Well, tell us too about the podcast, Asking for a Friend.
So I launched a podcast last year with a friend of mine, and the podcast is called Asking for a Friend. And really our goal with the podcast is to help women engage in meaningful conversations about difficult topics. Mm-hmm. So we really push our listeners to rethink the world around them, what that looks like for themselves, the church, and the world. So we really dig into topics about women and culture and help women answer some of those tough questions, like things like, should women serve in the church? What is cultural appropriation mean? And why are friendships so hard? And things like that. We answer some of those tough questions just to help women find a space to walk in some of those tough things that a lot of times the church doesn't talk about, and just be able to provide this safe space to give women room to think and question things, and, just feel safe in that. Because I think a lot of times that the church and our culture expects women to just be quiet and, take whatever answer as the final say. And women need to have the room to ask questions and to feel like they are heard and accepted and seen for their struggling, for whatever that looks like. And so that has really been the goal of our podcast, is to come alongside these women and just let them know you're not alone in your questioning, and your questioning is okay, and continue to point them to Christ in everything.
All of that is a lot of stuff that you are working on. Get your hands in a lot of pots.
I like to do a lot of things at once.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about just kind of this could be the book or the podcast or Thrive Mom, like where, as you were at the beginning of any of those things, what fears did you face and kind of have to battle?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest fears that I have faced with doing things that I feel called to is the fear of failure. Feeling like, oh no, what if this doesn't go as well as I hoped? Or what if it doesn't, look exactly like I think it's supposed to? I just face that like fear of, oh no, what if this doesn't go well? And so just overcoming that has been a challenge for sure. And I think a lot of women struggle with that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Almost everyone I've talked to.
Yes, exactly.
So as like, if you dig into that a little bit, what would you say is kind of the root of that? Like, what would failure say about you?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I think that one of the biggest struggles that I've faced is really truly being authentic.
Mm.
And I think that when you put yourself out there and maybe if your book isn't purchased as much as if the sales aren't where you want them or your downloads on your podcast aren't where you want them, you feel like you failed in your story and that people aren't responding to your story. And so I think that is a huge challenge for women today who are putting themselves out there and chasing their dreams to write or speak or, whatever that looks like, that we face this wall of, okay, I want to share my story. I want to be authentic, but if I'm not accepted and if people don't hear my story for what it is, then I've failed and I've done something wrong. And so I think it's just a lot of hoops that we have to jump through sometimes of it's okay to be authentic. It's good to share our stories. Like that is what we're all about as women sharing the gospel. We need to share our stories. But it can feel like this, the imposter syndrome and all these things that we're like, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. And if it doesn't look like that person over there, then I have dropped the ball and I have failed in my calling.
Yeah. And there are so many ways that we can share very publicly now. Like,
yes.
10 years ago, it just wasn't like this. And so, yeah, there's a lot that we have to face as we say, yes, I will put my story out there.
Right.
I'm going to pop in here for just a minute to say thanks to our sponsor and tell you a little bit more about Faithful Counseling. If you've heard any of my other episodes this month, you know that my relationship with this awesome company came at just the right time for me here in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. It's one of the reasons I am so eager to share them with you, because I'm fairly certain I'm not alone. And I'm going to say it, this situation we're in has not brought out the best in me. I am an introvert and I am not used to being around people all day, every day. I need my alone time, and I'm not getting it right now. And I love my kids dearly, but honestly, I'm struggling with parenting them well right now, alongside not getting much of a break from this role. It has been really challenging. And I know myself well enough to understand that my bent is to want to run and hide from hard things, and I don't want to do that right now. I want to grow because the cost is too high not to. So I started meeting with my counselor that first week we decided on social isolation, and it has been so good for me to have a place to process what's going on in my heart and mind and to find my way to a new mindset for parenting in these circumstances and hopefully beyond. So if you've been thinking you'd like to talk to someone about all that's going on in your heart and mind these days, the timing is perfect to try Faithful Counseling. Their online platform offers space for you to message your counselor 24 hours a day. So even if it's the middle of the night, you can share your worries and fears and thoughts with a Christian counselor, and you'll get timely, thoughtful responses. Plus, you get to schedule a weekly session by either video, phone, or chat at a time that's convenient for you from the comfort of your own home. Since you're stuck there anyway. But their services are more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available if you need it. And right now, as a Devoted Dreamer listener, you can get 10% off your first month when you use my link, getfaithful.com/dreamers. Counselors are available worldwide, and within Faithful Counseling's network of counselors, they have a broader range of expertise than you might expect to find locally if you were to search for someone on your own. If these unique circumstances find you wanting some additional support, a place to process and grow from a Christian perspective, be sure to check out Faithful Counseling and get 10% off your first month at getfaithful.com/dreamers. Now, back to the show. What do you think is like the best decision you've made along the way on this journey?
I would say doing that very thing that I said was so scary, just
Mm-hmm.
really opening up and being authentic, because that's where women say, oh my goodness, I don't feel alone now. You shared your story with me, and I feel a little bit of grace. And I know that I mess up and you mess up. And oh my goodness, like it always reminds me of like the Us Weekly, like, look, the stars grocery shop too. I feel like we feel like that as women. Like we see each other and we're like, oh my gosh, you do this too. And it's just this huge
Mm-hmm.
encouragement to us of, oh my goodness, like other people do the same things that I do. And it just really helps us connect with each other. And, opening up and being authentic is just such an important thing to do.
What do you feel like has been the greatest threat to you being able to continue to pursue this dream?
I would say probably not feeling like I'm part of this circle or that circle, or feeling like I don't fit in. Like I said, that imposter syndrome. A lot of times we feel like, well, if I'm going to make it, if I'm going to follow my dreams and I'm going to do this thing that I feel called to, then I have to be at this level. It's like we're in high school all over again. And, oh, I have to be in the popular crowd. I have to have this, these kind of stats and these kind of things, and we feel like we're not accepted if we're not if we're not at that level. And I think that can threaten our dreams because it makes us want to quit and walk away.
Yeah.
And in reality, the popular crowd is probably looking at them people above them and thinking, oh, well, I haven't made it. Because we just get sucked into this comparison of looking at everyone around us instead of just digging our heels in, focusing on the dream that God has put in our hearts and following that.
Yeah. So, what do you do? Like, what's your practical response to when you feel tempted to compare or think you're not enough?
Sometimes I just have to, if I'm comparing myself to certain people, usually it's on the internet where I don't even know that person
Right.
anyway. Sometimes I just have to like mute them on social media or even unfollow them. And I know that probably seems silly, but it's like, it's nothing they've done wrong. They're probably doing really great work. But if I can't control my own, you know, comparison and I'm letting my mind slip in that, then I just have to remove myself completely from the situation.
Yeah.
And I think it's really healthy for us to do that sometimes. Because, like I said, typically it's nothing they've done. It's really just all on us. And we just have to remove ourselves from whatever situation it is so we can get our hearts right, get our minds right to focus on what we're doing instead of looking around us.
Yeah. And I think it ebbs and flows, right? Like
For
some
sure.
days, just, you're like, oh, whatever, that they can do whatever they want. I've got to focus
Exactly.
here. And then some days
Yep.
you're like, I feel really vulnerable to this. Maybe I
Yes.
shouldn't be on Instagram
Maybe I
today.
should not look at anything today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that too means you got to know yourself a little bit, know
That's right.
what
Right.
you're drawn to fall
Mhm.
prey to.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Well, how closely does what you're doing today resemble maybe what you thought you would be doing like 5 or 10 years ago?
I think it follows pretty closely. I think my dreams have kind of changed and grown with me as I've changed and matured. And I really, over the years, I've asked myself more and more, what kind of impact do I really want to leave? Do I want to leave on my kids? Do I want to leave on the women I come in contact with? What does that look like for me? And, 5, 10 years ago, I'm not sure I was really asking myself that question. I think it was more about, what can I do? How can I make this about me? And now I'm realizing that it's not about me, and that's not a healthy place to be. And so I think that's great to really put ourselves outside of that and stop making things about us, stop making our dreams all about us, but how we can actually leave a lasting impact on the world. If we were to leave this world today, are we making an impact on the people around us?
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm like, how do you do all this with 4 kids? Like, what's your trick?
I don't know. They're pretty good kids. They all go to school all day. That's very helpful.
Yeah, I bet. Well, what other like suggestions would you have for someone who has a dream that maybe resembles one of yours, or, wants to write a book or whatever, and haven't started yet, and they're just trying to figure out, where do I even begin?
I would say don't try too hard. I know that sounds silly, but take time to rest. I have let myself get burned out more times than I like to count. Because, you're like, how do you do it all? Well, sometimes I do too much. And that's really the fact of the matter is so many times I've felt like, okay, well, I love doing all these things. How can I do more of them? How can I work harder? But really the most important thing I found is finding time to rest and take care of my mind, take care of my body, take care of my family, and in whatever ways that looks like. And so there's been seasons that I've just taken a sabbatical and taken a month away from the internet or whatever. Or I just, right now I'm working really hard on taking focusing on a Sabbath once a week where I just have a day that I don't open my computer, that I don't think about work things or, I have this book coming out and I need to focus on marketing and I need to, all those things, that I just focus on what's healthy for me. And so I think it's really important for us to build rhythms of rest into our lives that we can be healthier when it comes to following our dreams and doing our work, because the work is good. There's nothing wrong with working hard and doing good work, but we have to find that balance of really resting in the Lord for one, just building a lifestyle where we are constantly at rest in Him, and then actually physically resting our bodies.
Oh my gosh, I so feel that.
Yeah.
Today is Monday as we're recording this, and it's like, well, did I rest over the weekend? I'm not even sure.
Exactly.
And that's really my only opportunity,
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I got to get better at that for sure. Well, is there a verse of scripture that just comes to mind for you as just important as you're pursuing this dream, and someplace that you want to just continue to go back to and focus on?
Yeah. So the scripture in this, really in this season of life that I've been in, of chasing after abundance and really desiring that, has been in John 10, where Jesus says that I came to give you life and give it to you in the full. And that has been such an encouragement to me. Like I was telling in my story earlier, surely this isn't for everyone else but me. Jesus doesn't just say, okay, hey, you select group of people, I'm going to give you life. The rest of you be tired all the time, be exhausted, be weary, be worn out. He wants abundant life for all of us. And so that's just every day I have to remind myself, He came so that I could live. He came so that I could have abundant life, so that I could wake up every day and be grateful for the work that I get to do, to pour into women, to encourage women. And I'm going to do that to the best of my ability to continue to walk in abundance and not get stuck in, that circle of survival mode or just being so tired and weary.
And isn't it right around there where it talks about too that the enemy comes to steal and kill and destroy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's right before that. And you can't leave that part out. It's very important to know.
Yeah. And that, okay, we've got the victor over here, and this is what he says our life is about. And
yes.
Yeah, so good. Well, hey, I know you wanted to talk about, I guess we've talked about your book. You wanted to give away a copy of your book.
Yeah.
And I wanted to read the tagline. So it's called Mom Up, Thriving with Grace in the Chaos of Motherhood. So that kind of captures it all there.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, we want to give away a copy of that on Instagram. So if you're listening and that sounds like the book for you, or you have a friend who you would love to encourage her with this opportunity to possibly win a copy of this book, can you go to my Instagram, which is @MeritJO, and then look for that post, and then follow me and follow Kara-Kae, who is Kara-Kae James, and I will tag her in there, make it easy for you. And then just tag a couple girlfriends that would be encouraged by this opportunity. And we would love to give one of you a copy of this sweet book.
Yay.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yeah. And how has it been? You're still kind of in the early months since the book launched. What has that, this is your first book, right?
Right.
So what's
Yeah,
that been like?
Oh, it was a whirlwind. So I launched the book, and then I actually had 3 Bible studies come out
Oh gosh.
a few months later. And then I had another book that just came out. And so, yeah, it's been kind of crazy, but it was a fun couple of years of just writing.
Mm,
And like I said, a whirlwind, but worth it and so much fun.
yeah, that's
In the
awesome.
process of it, it felt a lot like pregnancy. I was like, I'm never writing another book.
Oh
I'm
my
never doing
gosh.
this again. And then once it's over, I'm like, I could do that again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's funny how, and my agent even told me the same thing. People always do that. It's like pregnancy. You forget how bad it was, and then you want to do it again.
So are you thinking about doing it again?
Oh, probably at some point. I'm
Yeah.
taking this year to really rest, like I said.
Good. Awesome. Great. Well, I will put all the different ways that people can find you and connect with you and connect with Thrive Moms and find your podcast. I'll put all that in the show notes. And I'd love to know, I know you guys just started in the fall on the podcast, but
Mhm.
do you have like a favorite episode that you've done so far?
Oh, goodness. We did a series on women in the church, and I loved that because it's a topic that I'm really passionate about. And we just recently we did one episode that was, Am I stressed or burned out? And people really resonated with that because it's something I think we face so often. And then we've done a couple episodes on mental health that have been really good. I think we don't talk about our mental health enough, and so that's been a really good thing to focus on and talk about.
Awesome. Those are great. Okay. I'll put some of that in the show notes as well. What about what's coming up? Do you know topics that you're thinking about or planning for?
Yeah, so in May, we are actually going to be focusing on talking about foster care because it's Foster Care Awareness Month, and we're going to talk about some of those things and also understanding poverty within the United States and talk about welfare and some of those tough things. So those are some topics that I'm really excited about digging into.
Awesome. And are you guys weekly or how often do you publish?
We are. We're
Okay.
weekly, every Thursday.
Every Thursday. Awesome. Okay. All of that is going to be in the show notes. That's super fun.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, this has been fun to kind of get to know you a little bit and a little bit about your ministry and your process of how you're doing all the things. I think
Yes.
the trick is put all your kids in school.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's good for them too.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
it is. They love it. So
For sure. Well, I'd love for you to just kind of reflect with us here as we close a little bit on if you had to look at yourself before you began doing any of this and compare it to who you are today, how would you say that God has changed you in saying yes to this God-shaped dream?
I would say that really following the dreams that God's put in my heart has made me a better follower of Him. And it's made me a better wife, mom, friend, all around. You know, it's really helped me dig into who God is and not be afraid to ask bigger questions of Him and about Him. And, you know, I've learned that I truly have a friend in Jesus, and He's that comfort in the hard times. And I've really begun to learn who God is and who He made me to be. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful for the valleys that I've walked through because it's helped me to better understand what abundant life looks like, that it's not just all about the good times and everything being, you know, smooth sailing, but that I can follow Him and find Him no matter the season.
If you've been in search of the abundant life that Jesus promises, this was the episode for you. You will find the show notes at meritonsa.com/podcast/149. And I will also link to all the ways you can connect with Kara-Kae, learn more about Thrive Moms or her podcast, Asking for a Friend. And as I think about it, my big takeaway from this conversation truly is that reminder that abundant life is for all of us. I don't know if you could hear it in my voice the way I did as I listened to it again, but that week that we recorded this interview, I was deep in overwhelm. It was almost like I was doubting her words about abundant life as she was saying them, even though it's truth from the Bible. And I can say this now because social isolation and coronavirus pandemic have shifted something in me. I'm doing things these days that literally 2 months ago, if you had suggested I do them, I would have thought you were crazy. Like taking my kids out on a run in the Burley trailer every morning. I would have looked at you like, what? Where would I find time to fit in an hour for a walk, run, and a snack picnic in the park with 2 kids under 5? What about work? When would I do that? What about our plans? What about our appointments? I know the situation that we're in right now is incredibly serious and life-threatening for many, especially those on the front lines and those with a pre-existing condition and a positive test. It is truly devastating what the virus is doing. But that's not what's right in front of me right now. And I'm guessing if you're listening to this, that's not where you are either. So we are called to take the circumstances we've been given and receive the abundant life God has promised us. What's my abundant life? What is it? It's resting in Jesus. It's seeing my children, really seeing them, learning who they are, finding the little nooks and crannies of thoughts, desires, hopes, and fears that have been there all along that maybe I missed because I was too busy. But my abundant life is being the parent they need rather than prioritizing my work every single time they say they need me. Now, maybe I'm not doing it every single time, but you know what I'm talking about. Like that, I'm just feeling that pressure in this moment right now. And so where I'm at now in that abundant life is that I'm learning to be in the place of what matters most. And thankfully, I can right now. I know that's a privilege not everybody has. And honestly, I'm not doing this perfectly. I have really struggled emotionally and with so much impatience with my children. We're just not used to being together this often. Staying home has not brought out the best in me, especially at the beginning. But that is why I'm so grateful for my counselor at Faithful Counseling, which came at just the right time for me to face and deal with some of the hard things that were shaping our lives and not in a good way. So this whole closing thoughts is much longer than I want it to be. But if you are at all struggling with any of this stuff, I want for you what Kara-Kae talked about. And that's to know that you're not alone and that the abundant life in Jesus is for you too. So let's be creative and find ways to help each other with that. Okay? I would love it. We all want to make an impact, right? I mean, what are those dreams about anyway? Well, here's a quick way to do that right now for someone who needs what you just heard. Will you take a screenshot of this episode, tag me at MerrittJO, and share it in your Instagram stories so that together we can get this encouraging message into the earbuds of the women who are ready to fight back fear, trust their identity in Christ, and unleash the dreams He's given them for their lives. It's so simple to do, and they will thank you for your recommendation. Then, before you go, if you were encouraged by today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review of the show over on iTunes so other dreamers just like you can find the podcast. Until next time, I would love to connect with you over on Instagram or in the Devoted Dreamers Insiders group on Facebook, where you'll find a community of like-minded women who love Jesus and are in the midst of pursuing the dream He's placed on their hearts. Thank you so much for joining me today. And wherever you are with your God-shaped dreams, may you have the courage to take one step toward their realization today.